Hi, I'm Tyson,
I'm Colin.
I'm Ryan.
And I'm Laurel.
and we're the Gamesmiths, and we just got done playing Chrysopia. We want to talk to you a little bit about our experience with it. To start, Laurel's got some thoughts for us.
All right. So I really liked the premise of the game. I really enjoy the whole alchemy aspect of like the the planning of it. I guess I'm a fan of Full Metal Alchemist, so that immediately drew me in. And then I really liked all the art, and the whole thing was just very aesthetically pleasing. And that's important to me when I play games. So.
Yeah, and your whole like the story at the beginning too was really good. Like getting into that and the their hubris turned their harness into the well of chaos and everything like that, and that was all really fun and cool. And like sending I felt that you have, because you do kind of, part of what you've got going on here is a worker placement game. And you have this idea of, okay, your workers are going out and gathering stuff and then bringing it back to your base where you're doing your alchemy, where it's safe. And your workers have to go out in the danger zone, and then they bring it back to you, and your mad scientist or wizard or whatever back in your lab trying to do the alchemy and stuff like that. And so I thought that worked pretty, I thought that worked pretty well, and worked well with the mechanics of, sending the golems out, gathering resources, coming back with the resources to base where you'd tinker with them and then send them back out again, or use what they brought back to do your alchemy. I thought that was very cool, and the mechanics really helped tell that story too.
Yeah, that was really my feeling as well. That like, I don't know that you explicitly said all of that type of stuff, but the mechanics that you had specifically with that worker placement element that Ryan was just talking about really contributed to telling that story, that you've got this dangerous world that has been turned dangerous by the hubris of men,
the wild
and
magics,
alchemists, and whomever is participating in that, and the only way to remedy that is to use these golems, and these golems are really cool. And I loved the idea of taking a worker and upgrading it progressively throughout it, instead of getting, like, most worker placement games that I've seen that do like the upgraded worker is just okay, you get a different type of worker later on that adds different abilities or whatever, rather than we had the same workers throughout the entire game, and we had the ability to improve their stats. And that was really compelling to me, because it told that story, just like Ryan was saying, that you've got these workers, and they're the further they go into the wastelands, towards the chaos, the well of chaos, the more dangerous it becomes, and the harder it is to be able to be as fruitful. So you have to increase their capacity to do well. And I really liked the story that was told with the mechanics that were chosen to tell that story. I think that they tied pretty well together with that.
Well, and also as a listener to listening to the rules and then learning how to play it without knowing anything about it, what Ryan did differently than what we usually do is he usually reads all the way through the rules during our rules videos and explains it all to us. And this time he read the rules beforehand and then presented it to us in a way where we could understand the premise, how to play the game, and he was able to teach it to us in a way where we kind of understood. So that tells me that your rules are pretty tight, and that you did a good job explaining where to find things. As far as looking over at the computer, they look very nice as well.
Yeah.
So we can tell you spent a lot of time on this, and we really appreciate how much effort you put forth to producing this game. So
everything looks really nice. I would say that the rules could use a little bit of cleaning up in kind of how you ordered them. My biggest critique about the rules in particular is you taught a lot through examples without necessarily clearly stating the rules sometimes. So, like, you never clearly stated in the rules that when you're attacking, you get to use the 8-sided die, and when you're defending, you use the 6-sided die. You just gave an example where the attacker used 8 and the defender used 6. And I kind of extrapolated that rule because there was nothing anywhere clearer, where it never clearly said, so I'm hoping we played that correctly, because I never saw a sentence where it just said, in like bold letters, attackers use D8, defenders use D6. You just said, here's an example of combat, and you said, since X is attacking, they use the D8, and since Y is defending, they use the D6. And I just kind of assumed, okay, that must just be the rule. But that rule was never clearly stated. So the one big critique I would give you about your rule book is make sure you kind of clearly and dryly and kind of like a lawyer would state the rules in a very just like, this is the way. And then the examples are kind of an apology for that. It's just like, I get it, but when you guys actually understand it, reading the rules like this makes it hard to learn. Examples are much easier to learn with, but when you're 2 hours into the game and you're arguing about a rule, you need the lawyerly text to actually argue over.
And there were a couple of instances in which we weren't clear on how something's worked, and we felt we had to make our own determinations, interpretations. And I'm sure you'll be able to go back and look at what those instances were, because I think that highlights exactly what you were just saying, Ryan, and that you need to be explicit in those, so that there is no ambiguity. If this is the way it's supposed to work, that's the way it needs to be written out. But overall, I think there was there was enough there that we could experience what the game was. Overall, as you saw, we did a fairly lengthy play of the game, and we didn't get to complete the game. And I'm honestly not sure if I don't think my experience would have changed if Ryan had gotten 1 seal or 4 seals.
Right.
Like,
Well, and
I felt the
I
same.
don't think I honestly feel like we only had 2 of the chaos marks left. I think we would have lost the game before anyone would have even gotten close.
But the
to winning.
experience that I'm
With
talking
this-
about is
Yes.
that, like, I would have felt the same way.
The
I
experience
felt like
would have been a
Ryan's
loss,
gonna
and it
win
would
the
have been
game
a
right
feel
now
bad.
by getting that first seal.
Right.
And I think it was the same feeling as I would have had if it were the 4th seal. But at the same time, the game felt complete when you got that first seal in my
Right.
experience.
That was almost like do all this stuff and then complete your alchemy experiment to win the game.
And I don't think that is where the game wants to be, especially with the name being Chrysopia,
Right.
and that talking about the changing of gold or lead to gold. And
You should probably be getting to that alchemy a little quicker.
yeah, it should be the highlight of the game. And with that in mind, I felt like the first 3 turns of the game were just written out. This is what you need to do. First, you need to move produce so that you get your workers out on the board. Now that you've done that, there's resources there. It's unfortunate because now the 4th player was the last one to move produce, and now she can't produce or collect everything that everybody else
Or
is.
she has to fight when.
Exactly, she has to fight. There's some player turn order issues there that I saw, but beyond that, you have that first turn, it goes through, everybody does essentially the same thing. Colin diverged a little bit, but ultimately it was the same thing. He ended up getting resources just like everybody else. And then you have that next turn, which was that build gather. Okay, now those resources are there, we've got to gather them up. That feeling to me just felt bad, and I never once throughout the game wanted to produce, and in fact, I don't think I ever actually produced any resources that could be collected by anybody else. And because I just felt like,
And I felt like I had to.
right,
I felt like there was no
people that
options.
had to. I had my prime golem that allowed me to kind of get away with some of that, but
Yeah, because I was
Yeah.
like, what am I going to do on my turn? There's nothing on the board. There's nothing that I have right now. So I can either do nothing and wait for someone else to produce. It's kind of like a game of chicken where like,
who's going to do it first?
yeah, who's going to
Yeah.
do it? And then who gets to reap the rewards? And by the time it got back to me, it's like, oh, the stuff I wanted isn't even there. And I'm having to wait a whole turn. And then, oh, shoot. like now I only get 2 or 3 of those
Yeah.
things, and like,
Well,
dang
and
it.
especially in those first 2 turns, too, for me being the last person, is like I couldn't even, by the second turn, I couldn't even gather.
You had to produce again,
Yeah,
right?
because like my first turn had to be spent putting my golems out, so I had to do move produce for
Right.
that one. And then the second turn, everyone had gathered up most of everything that was
Well, and
out
the
there
exciting part
already.
about that was rolling the die
Yeah.
to see
Right.
where you could actually like put your stuff, and like that's why I was just trying to get gold and.
But I
like,
didn't
get
want to do that
cards.
because it was
I
such
wanted
a
to get
time
c-
commitment.
Yeah.
I wanted to get cards. Like I wanted to see like, okay, well, how can I interact with these guys? And like the ones I had, they weren't exciting to me. That I drew, but I don't know if they would have really changed.
Yeah,
if I got
you were
other
talking
ones.
about that die rolling as being the exciting part, and I think die rolling can be a very exciting part. And I think with the alchemy portion, it was exciting.
Right.
And I think there were some complications that we can talk about a little later. But with the producing with the die rolls, I just felt like I don't want to do that because okay, I've got to roll all these dice. Now I've got to allocate those dice to certain areas to determine what I want, so I have to evaluate what that is.
Right.
And that's all chance-based, so I can't pre-plan that out as to what I'm going to do and where I'm going to put the dice. So I have to do that on my turn, and then everybody on that first turn has to do that. So you have to go through that. That made that first round, especially in a learning game, exceedingly long, and I
Yeah.
saw it as completely unnecessary.
And I think honestly, most of our feedback and criticism, I guess our negative feedback and criticism, boils down to you need to streamline this game a little bit more. See if there are things that you can automate, like Tyson was saying with the production. We were thinking maybe instead of doing that move produce, you move, and then at the beginning of each people's turn or something like that, the production is automatic based on the golem's production stats. So you still don't let them just gather infinite resources. There's still a limit to the amount of resources that are there based on the golems that are there. But then you're allowed to collect as well, kind of thing like that. So maybe the production is automatic or based on the number of golems that are there per round, or maybe because there are some issues with people feeling bad about going last all the time, so maybe we move the first player token, and every time the first player token moves, that's when a new round of things are produced. Or maybe with the alchemy stuff, instead of having to build each of the stations are there and you can send your golems to them, and if you're doing alchemy while someone is in the forge, they just get the benefit of having a golem in the forge while they're doing their alchemy rolls. And just maybe see if there's a step or two that you can take out, or because I think this is very good, and it can still be a long game and still be a good game.
Or maybe you could do 2
But
actions in the
just-
same
That's
turn.
what I was going to say, is
Okay,
have
yeah.
a card with like choices of what you can do, where you can do like several actions and you choose them off of your like base card.
So maybe move and gather, or build
Yeah.
and produce instead of move and produce, or yeah.
I think that addresses the issue that I think we're touching on here, is that it just felt limiting in my experience to be able, okay, I want to do this thing, but it requires me to take this turn, the next turn, and potentially the following turn to be able to do
Right.
that, particularly with building. At one point, so I had my golems all upgraded at least a few turns before anybody else did. Colin got his all upgraded fully, but I don't know that you two
Right.
ever got
Well, and
yours all
actually, we
ready.
just weren't clear on what the prime golem could do, as far as like, could the prime golem build, and
But I'm not
like
even
what are
talking
all
about
those
the prime
stats
golem.
too. I just
Well, but
that was just something.
That's
I
part of the reason that I didn't upgrade mine,
Right.
because I forgot that you had to pay the 2 extra. So
do it,
mine
yeah.
would have been all fully upgraded, but I left with space because I forgot.
But my point with that is specifically, even once I got them all fully to that point, I didn't feel powerful. Like, I didn't feel as if I could do much better than what I was doing. I could maybe reduce the amount of turns it would take to do something, but it's still going to take multiple turns to do it.
Right.
And that just, when it takes me multiple turns to build one thing that can lend itself to doing alchemy better,
Right.
it just, like I didn't want to go through all of those
Like
decisions.
everything kind of takes 2 turns. Like it takes
At
2
least,
turns
yeah.
to produce enough stuff. It takes 2 turns to gather enough stuff. It takes 2 turns to build anything. It takes, and so then that's like 2 rotations around the board where you like really have to invest. Okay, I'm going to produce all these things, then I'm going to gather all these things, and if someone messes that up,
Well, and the problem I saw with all of that is that we were getting all these chaos tokens in the meantime that was discouraging you from doing alchemy, which was the whole goal of the game. So it's like, oh man, I got 5 of these
Yeah.
chaos tokens, and it's going to prevent me from doing alchemy well. So all these resources that I've been taking turns and turns and turns to get, I'm just going to lose them because of these dang chaos
Yeah.
tokens.
So
So it's like,
maybe one of
it was frustrating.
One of the actions could be like getting rid of chaos
Mm-hmm.
too. Like in Legendary, you get rid of 2
Wounds.
wounds.
spend steam. As
So
an-
it could
or
be like
something,
that.
yeah.
I was thinking it could be cool to maybe add more golems. Like
Yeah.
if you could do some sort of alchemy to like create
another
more.
golem.
Well, and that's kind of what the wasteland card was, because there was like
Yeah, that's
elemental
true.
cards. So like I had some cool opportunities to
Yeah.
buff up 3. I was like,
Yeah.
oh,
I
that's
felt
really
stuff got a little
exciting.
too stuck in
Well,
the wasteland too.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
we got pretty unlucky with the cards that we drew in the wasteland, so I don't know like what
Yeah.
the ratio is between like buffs and chaos cards. But I think I didn't draw any buffs.
Yeah.
I got the 3.
I didn't draw
You
a
got
single
one
card from the
buff,
wasteland.
and then you
Yeah, which
drew
helped me
chaos
which
cards.
helped me
Chaos
like
cards.
Yeah.
bypass being able to buy the 7 build thing, which was huge
Yeah.
for being that so hard.
Yeah, I think those buffs are really helpful and beneficial to the game. I just wish that we would have gotten more of them.
Yeah,
The
it was
only
just
way
hard.
though that I really saw that you go to the wasteland is if somebody
You lose
kicks
a
you there,
fight,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
maybe
it's-
you could have flown your airship there. I guess I didn't
Maybe,
really think
yeah,
about
I don't
that.
know
Yeah, I
if we
didn't
could
But
have.
once
I
you get
did.
there, you don't harvest things.
Right.
You can't harvest from the wasteland.
And so it just
necessarily. So it just gathers
exponential
stuff.
growth there. And the other thing with that was, to me, that felt like the spaces weren't limiting enough. Like in a 4-player game, there are 3 spaces, and since there are 4 areas to go to, I never felt that I had to contest anybody. And I had the
Yeah.
prime golem that could have just kicked anybody out without competition and have no problems. But I never once felt the need to do that because I was like, I don't need to go there right now. I don't need to do that. It doesn't concern me. And so the spaces didn't really feel constraining to me.
Yeah, and I think ultimately we all had a lot of fun. Like, and we saw the potential in the game, but everything was just moving a little too slowly. Like I really enjoyed the alchemy. I thought that was a really cool game once you got to it, but it seemed like a whole other game, and it took us a long time to get there. So I think we all see the potential in this game. I think we all like the world that you've built is very cool. All of the lore and the mechanics and everything matches up really nice to give this really cool play experience, but then it just kind of moves a little too slowly. It takes a little too long to do everything.
Especially
Every
since we
action,
almost
right.
lost, since there's only 2 more tokens on the well.
Right.
So, like, I
But
think we would have lost that game, and then we would have said, man, we played for 3 hours, and
4 hours. and-
before we didn't even get close to winning. Like, and it was just too hard.
Yeah, or maybe making it a cooperative game where we're all working towards putting one seal on. I don't
To
know.
beat the clock.
Yeah, to beat it. Like
I
I
Because
like
we were
the
rolling- we
competition
were
between
rolling
the
a
worker
lot, yeah.
placement, though. That's the thing that really
Yeah.
excited me was that
But I
I
felt
need
like-
that space more than you do.
I felt like we were already like working together though to like get those things out on the board. Well, except for you who never produced.
Yeah,
But I don't know. I feel like there was conflicting, we were working together, but then we were also competing. So changing it to be more competitive or more cooperative, I think would be beneficial.
But like I was saying, we really enjoyed
Yes.
we had a lot of fun with it. The mechanics really, like I said, the mechanics were telling the story that the game wanted to tell, The the world was very cool. The lore and the backstory was all very cool.
The components and the gears were
like
fun.
the gears and turning
Yeah.
everything around, and that was all very fun. And then just the gems and everything, like it
And
looked
spinning
very
the
cool.
wheel
Yeah.
was fun.
Yeah,
looked
spinning
very
wheel,
cool.
lots
Yeah.
of fun.
It looked very cool, and it
ridiculous.
was a lot of fun, and we enjoyed the experience. So ultimately, I think you've got a very cool game here, but I would look at trying to slim down some of it, make it move a little bit faster. If it's going to take 3 hours, hour 1 should be gathering stuff, hour 2 should be building stuff, and hour 3 should be alchemy. It shouldn't get to the alchemy at hour 3. So I would pace it, trying to get it to be like a 3-act play. But I think you have a very
and maybe get rid of like some of the irrelevant pieces, like the blimps we never used, and the the ship.
Yeah. I mean, if you have to get rid of those for like price reasons,
That's
do
why I
it,
would do
but,
it.
like, if you
'Cause they're
don't
not necessary.
have to get rid of it, like I liked those things.
yeah. No, they were
Like
fun.
I think they're just like fun little aesthetic
Yeah, no,
pieces
absolutely.
that
keep them.
I like putting stuff like that on. But
Yeah.
if it's a monetary thing.
But no, so once again, you have great game here, great mechanics. I just focus on maybe streamlining it and getting it to move a little faster. But other than that, thank you very much and keep up the good work.